Okay, we're connected, ready to go. Okay. So as you know, I've been on retreat, and we're starting up again this week and keep going. Okay. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. So, what I would like to do for the next while, I want to start a series on the Girimānanda Sutta. I think today's episode will be pretty short. I just want to kind of set the ground, and we'll go through the reflections. Yeah, you behave. We'll go through the reflections of the 10 reflections in the Girimānanda Sutta over the next 10 weeks. Girimānanda Sutta is in the Book of Tens in the Anguttara Nikaya, and I'll just read the first few lines. It's the introduction to the sutta. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Sawati in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's park. Now, on that occasion, the Venerable Girimānanda was sick, afflicted, and gravely ill. Then the Venerable Ananda approached the Blessed One, paid homage to him, sat down to one side, and said to him, Bhante, the Venerable Girimānanda is sick, afflicted, and gravely ill. It would be good if the Blessed One would visit him out of compassion. If, Ananda, you visit the Bhikkhu Girimānanda and speak to him about 10 perceptions, it is possible that on hearing about them, his affliction will immediately subside. What are the 10? Then there's 10 perceptions that we'll go through the next few weeks. It's the bulk of the sutta. Now, a couple of notes. Girimānanda is otherwise a fairly obscure character. This is his only mention in the Nikayas. The commentary gives a story about him that King Bimbisara offered him, asked him to stay in his territory and offered to build him a hermitage, but then got busy with his affairs and forgot about it. And Girimānanda was left sitting outdoors under a tree and suffering from the ill effects of the weather. And the Devas took pity on him and stopped the rain. And this caused a drought in Magadha, and King Bimbisara investigated the cause and came to the conclusion that he neglected his promise to Girimānanda, so that he built him a hermitage. It's a story from the commentaries. This particular sutta is sometimes chanted in Theravada countries in Pali as a parita, a protection chant to help those who are ill. And the conclusion of the story in the sutta is that after hearing the 10 reflections and turning his mind towards them, the Venerable Girimānanda recovered from his affliction, and that is how he was cured of his affliction. Now, it's no doubt that our state of mind can affect our bodily health, for good or for ill. This is clear. One obvious example that's well known, but it's never really been properly studied, I think, is the so-called placebo effect. if someone has a disease and the doctor gives him a neutral pill, a sugar pill or something, and tells him this is a powerful medicine, will cure your disease, very often it will result in a cure, which is just purely the effect of the mind. People can make themselves gravely ill with their mental formations, particularly of worry and fear and so on. It can really debilitate one's health. Whereas a joyous, peaceful mind conduces to a good bodily health. It keeps all the energies and humors in the body in good balance. So, as I said, this is going to be very brief. That's really all I wanted to get across today. I'll stay on and we can just have an informal discussion about anything. But this should be a fairly good source of material for Dhamma talks over the next 10 weeks. I think this is actually a very good sutta. Okay, so let's see what we have in the chat. Anybody got anything they'd like to talk about? Oh. Yeah, people are greeting Young Shadow here. Yeah. She's not that young, actually. She's like 12 years old. Okay, now we got a couple of questions. How does karma persist in terms of ultimate truth, paramatta satta? Yeah, on the surface level, we think of karma as being associated with persons, like my karma, your karma, and so on. But in the Abhidhamma analysis, it's really understood as a balancing or an accounting of mind states. That a mind state, a skillful mind state, will lead to a profitable result, and an unskillful mind state will lead to an unprofitable result. So when you look at it at the level of individual mind moments, then it takes away the tendency to attribute it to a self or a person. We're seeing of course, on a practical level, on our actual experience of it's individual, but it's in the ultimate analysis, it's to do with mind moments, a balancing of cause and effect of individual mind moments. Okay, next one. Dear Ajahn, is the ultimate goal of proper meditation practice stopping all thinking and discursive activities of the mind, achieving and resting in a state of equanimous yet fully present mind, a mind without object to grasp and get fascinated with, only be disappointed by it later, move on to another, thereby preventing all subsequent unsatisfactoriness. Yeah, that's one way of expressing it. I think it's a bit more than just stopping thinking. It's stilling all formations. So getting to a state, and it's not a forcible suppression of the thinking process. It's getting to a state of being that is behind or beyond the formations, a more essential or primordial level of your being that has nothing to do with your individual personality or person. And if you can sit in that state that's behind any individuality, just a pure consciousness or pure chitta, then you can notice when the mind begins to deviate from that position, and you can see how impulses of either desire or fear or other, usually those two, but in any sort of defiled impulse begins to pull the mind out into creating formations, and then you just don't go there. You just like nip it in the bud, stop it at that point, and you can rest in that state of just pure being without doing. So let's see what else we have here. When each Mahakappa repeats, is it similar to other Mahakappas, i.e. dinosaurs, Greeks, 1980s, now, etc.? I don't think necessarily it's a detailed repetition, but I think the patterns are, the general trends tend to be similar. And the only thing we can really have to go on that is judging from stories. We have the Jataka stories that are legends about the Buddha's past lives, and most of them would have occurred in previous kappas. And we see a very great similarity. At least this is how it was perceived by the redactors of the Jataka stories. They talk about Jambudipa, which we would, in practical terms, we could equate with India. We talk about cities like Varanasi and so on. And there seems to be this general milieu is perceived as not as being repetitive, but the details of how people play out in their existence is not the same, because we have the Bodhisattva doing different things in different lifetimes. If there was an exact replay in every detail, then there wouldn't be any free will. We would just be running a script, which was held by some philosophers in ancient India, but it was denied by the Buddha. But the real truth is we don't know. We have no real firm knowledge of what may have happened in previous world ages. There's no way of knowing, short of having the psychic power of a Buddha. Can you explain Dhammanusari and Sadhanusari? I heard that both of these kinds of people are guaranteed stream entry in this life. Is that so? Yeah, that's the Dhammanusari is the Dhamma follower, and Sadhanusari is the faith follower. And that is a idea that I think, and those terms are in the Pali Canon, but I believe the idea that they're guaranteed stream entry is from the commentary. Would have to check that, but I don't think that's original in the original canon. The Dhamma follower is one who progresses by intellect and by insight, by vipassana, by examining the the Dhammas. And a faith follower is one who progresses by having very, very strong faith and follows the teachings in that way. So in one sense, we could say it's a difference between the mind or the intellect and the heart. Different types of people will have different approaches to the Dhamma. As far as being guaranteed stream entry, there is also a related teaching that I'm sure is from the commentary, talking about the stages of insight. That when a meditator gets to the stage of seeing what is path and what is not path, which means they've gotten past the 10 corruptions of insight, and they're clearly on the right track now. They see that they're no longer falling for the tricks of the mind. They're no longer looking for fireworks and blissful experiences, but they're gone back to the work of investigation. That's called the knowledge of what is path and what is not path. And it's said that the person who reaches that stage is a chula sotapanna, a little stream winner. They haven't yet glimpsed nibbana, but it's inevitable that they will, because they're on the right track. Am I right in thinking that Buddha nature is belief only held in Mahayana? That is a Mahayana concept, but I don't think there's anything in Theravada that actually contradicts it or goes against it. The idea that we have the potential of enlightenment is inherent in the human condition. The knowing mind sees all. Does this explain why I view a memory? I view it in 360 degrees. You're talking to someone, you see them, and whatever is in your peripheral vision. But when I have a memory of that, it's like I'm a drone up in the sky, viewing it from all angles. I think that my take on that would be that it's not so much that your mind has some privileged view, but that the memory is not an accurate replay of what we actually experience. It's a construct of the mind, and the memory is pretty fallible. We can see that many times things are misremembered and people get details wrong. So when you're remembering a scene from the past, you fill in the blanks. So it could be perceived as you're a third party looking from the outside and viewing it from a different angle. You're talking to someone, you see them, and whatever it is. Well, it's the same question. Ajahn, would it be accurate to say that vipassana is a state of mind of non-grasping, so it targets upadana and the links of dependent origination? That is one way I think of describing the state of mind of vipassana. I like to say that vipassana shouldn't be thought of as a meditation technique. The meditation techniques are skill in means of accessing the state of mind of vipassana, which is non-reactive, non-judgmental, clear awareness of the objects of consciousness, and not identifying with them, and, as you say, not grasping them. So not taking them up as something to be held or pursued. It's difficult because there's two aspects to vipassana that both have to be functional for the proper state of mind. One is not to miss anything, to be so clear mindfulness, being aware of whatever arises to consciousness. And the other side of that is not grasping anything, not holding on to anything, just letting the objects pass through, um, not succumbing to either desire for the object or aversion or fear of the object. Let's see the next. Are the Lokuttara Chittas maintained after Parinibbana and continue to experience Nibbana? Are they Nietzsche? No, I don't think we can say that. We really can't specify the state of being of a Tathagata after death, and this was made quite clear by the Buddha in a Sutta in the Majjhima, which I believe it's number 70. I may have the number wrong, but he's speaking to an ascetic, and he's asked the question, does the Tathagata exist after death? Which is essentially your question here. And the Buddha says, no, that does not fit the case. And then he says, well, does he not exist after death? No, that does not fit the case. Does he both exist and not exist? Does not fit the case. Does he neither exist nor not exist? Does not fit the case. And this one thing that a bit of background to understand this dialogue is that those are four positions in the system of Indian logic. It's called the tetralemma, that things, a proposition is either true or false, or both true and false, or neither true nor false. So it's different than Greek logic, which is binary. So what the Buddha is essentially saying there is that we can't specify in our terms. We can't put it into logic or into words. What is the state of a arahant after parinibbana? There's no so any kind of speculation around it is fruitless. Any kind of attempt to define it is kind of wrong-headed. Do you think Lokuttara Chittas contradict the suttas? No, I don't see why you would think that. Maybe the problem, this is a continuation from, or an answer to the previous one. Maybe the problem was the he part, that something does exist, but it is not him technically. Again, I would just caution not to try and define the state of an arahant after parinibbana. It's just not comprehensible to our mind. We can't hold it, so we can't say he exists or doesn't exist, or anything exists or doesn't exist. It's beyond the duality of existence and non-existence. Do you think Nagarjuna's explanation of the four tetralemmas of the Tathagata after death make philosophical sense? I'm sorry, I'm not aware of Nagarjuna's argument on that point. I can't really comment. Venerable Sir, how does memory work according to Abhidhamma? Is it like current consciousness focused on a past consciousness moment, so it's not stored in the brain as the current scientific understanding? I don't think even modern science has a good understanding of memory. Abhidhamma, I've not found in any Abhidhamma that I've studied a detailed discussion of the question of memory. Seems in general it's the mind adverting to a past object, although the adverting always happens in the present, so the object is no longer real. It's a sankhara or a fabrication. There is cause and effect. Everything that's ever occurred leaves traces. It has some resonance. So it may be that the mind can tap into that great chain of cause and effect, and I don't know if you're aware of the concept of a blockchain in cryptocurrency. This is everything. Every transaction that's been done with Bitcoin is stored in a blockchain, so it can be reconstructed. It may be that this kind of storage of past events is in some kind of field effect that the mind can tap into, and this would also explain how memory of past lives is possible, because obviously the brain is not connected to past lives. The brain is a material object that comes into being and passes out of being in one lifetime, but people do occasionally get past life recollections. So it may be that I'm kind of speculating here, but it may be that there's some kind of field that one can tap into, and all the past resonances leave traces there. If human rebirth is precious, how do we explain the explosion in human population? Are people more moral? No, I don't think. I definitely don't think it's the case that people are more moral. It's why so many beings have taken human birth in the last 100 years is it's kind of mysterious to me that they're obviously coming in from other realms. It may be that some of them are falling down from the Dewa realms, and some of them are coming up from the animal realms or the hell realms. I find it hard to credit that people have become more moral. It often seems like they're getting worse. But that may be just my old cranky view. Okay, I was thinking Lokuttara Chittas contradict the suttas because nirvana is never described as a state of consciousness but as extinguishment. Yeah, that's a valid observation. But there is the moment of realizing nibbana. And that's what Lokuttara Chitta refers to. It is kind of a paradox that there's a nirodha, cessation, but there's also some kind of awareness of that. Again, it's the mysterious things of mysterious realm of the transcendental. Any thoughts on Soku Shinbutsu? I don't know. I have no idea what that is. It sounds Japanese. I don't know what that is. I was reading in the Mahasangika Vinaya that they claim the split actually did occur due to Vinaya, and Mahadeva was a later figure that caused a split in Mahasangika tradition. Which history do you think makes the most sense? Yeah, it's impossible to really reconstruct for sure what happened. There is what we're referring to here is the Second Council, and there was a dispute in the Second Council that was kind of papered over, but then I think it was like 20 years later, there was the dispute broke out again, and this time it wasn't resolved, and there was a breakaway group that became the Mahasangikas. Mahad was obviously all we can say for sure about him, he's one of the founders of that Mahasangika tradition. That's generally a lot of scholars think of the Mahasangika as the precursor of Mahayana. What we have, some of the stories we have about Mahadeva make him out to be a real dubious, villainous kind of character, but they may be from his opponents. So it's really hard to get to the bottom of it. There is an account. There's more than one account, but I think there's like at least 3 different accounts of the Second Council. There's the Theravada version that we find in the Vinaya texts that is quite explicit that it was a dispute over Vinaya. And the Mahasangikas were the ones who wanted to laxer Vinaya, relax some of the rules. But there is an account that's preserved in Tibetan translation that doesn't mention the Vinaya at all. It has the split occurring over points of doctrine. And in particular, they wanted to elevate the status of a Buddha and downgrade the status of an Arahant. But to answer your question, what version do I think makes the most sense? I think it's very likely it was a dispute over Vinaya. That seems to be the most likely, most believable, likely scenario. I could very well see that it was human nature that there'd be some groups of monks who wanted to relax the Vinaya rules and other groups of monks who wanted to hold on to the strict tradition. After the Buddha's enlightenment, how far in the past was he able to see his past events? Well, according to the account of his enlightenment night that we get in the I think it's the it's one of the Vinaya texts. There's an account of his enlightenment night, and it says that one of his visions that night was to see all his past lives going back hundreds of thousands of world ages, without limit. How far back he wanted to look, he could recall that life. Have you found certain kinds of meditation easier than others while doing daily activities? Well, general mindfulness is appropriate while you're in activity. Running a mantra in your mind is also a reasonable thing to do while you're busy. Okay, let's take a couple more here. Referring to the previous question, is human rebirth considered rare for a human or in general? Are we all creatures of habit? And the body goes, the mind carries around, especially with the strongest habits, one of which is language, and one would think we tend to come back similar with gradual change. Yeah, I think that human rebirth is considered rare in general, but it's certainly not guaranteed for a human if you don't keep decent morality. And there is, as you say, that there is a habit that goes along with rebirth. There is I wouldn't say it's necessarily explicitly found in the text, but there's a strong tradition that one tends to be reborn into the same sort of cultural milieu in general. Okay, someone's explaining that Japanese term. The term refers to the practice of Buddhist monks observing asceticism to the point of death, entering mummification while alive. Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't know the Japanese term, but I have heard of that. Yeah, that's not something that would be really practiced in Theravada. Although I have heard, actually, I have heard of the one famous monk about 100 years ago in Thailand who did something like that. What is the meaning of Dhammakaya in the Pali Suttas? Uh, the, it's a rare term in the Pali Suttas. It means the. I think it just means that the body of the, literally it means body of Dhamma. So it's just uh, the teachings in the so there would be distinction made between the body of the Buddha and his teachings. From a Buddhist perspective, do you believe that Abrahamic God actually exists? The Father, Son, Holy Ghost be two separate beings who believe they are permanently intertwined? I don't know if the Abrahamic God exists. If he exists, the Buddhist position would be he's not. He cannot be the creator or eternal. There is a sutta where the Buddha goes to see the Baka Brahma, and the Baka Brahma is under the delusion that he created the universe and that he's everlasting. And the way he talks about himself and describes himself, he sounds very much like the Abrahamic God. So the Buddhists certainly would not accept on the face of it the Abrahamic God, although there might, as they understand it, but there might be some powerful being, which we would probably think of as a Brahma being, that manifested in ancient times to people in the Middle East and became worshipped as God. That's a possibility. Okay, I'll take one more question and then I'll sign off. In Digha 9, it said that piti and sukha in jhana is true but subtle vikubodhi. Most monks say it is more of an overwhelming euphoria. What say you? I think it varies. I think there's a spectrum of intensity of these states, from very very mild subtle forms. As you get deeper into jhana, they become more profound. Okay, so I'll leave it there, and good to be back. And we'll see you again next week, and we'll start going through the 10 perceptions.